Okay, good. So,
1 second, Alan. Did you email or text Vic?
sure.
He's not answering, so I just want to text him. Did you email to everybody the new link?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Um, okay, you can start. I'm just texting him.
Okay. Right. So, I'll get us going, and Vic can join us in progress, I hope. And I don't see Yehuda on either, so.
1 second. Let me check with you
Sure.
because he. Oh, here, Vic's calling me. So yeah,
Okay.
have conversation for just a minute.
Okay. Speak among ourselves. Okay.
Just start on the art, I think.
Sure. I think so. If everybody's comfortable with that. So here we are at the end of Vayikra, Leviticus, with two parashot to wrap it up. And in the first, the Israelites are commanded to observe the Shemitah, a sabbatical every seventh year to give the land and the people a rest. English-born Israeli artist Darius Gilmont uses his light-hearted, naive style to showcase the 7 trips around the sun of the cycle that lead to the Shemitah, the time of rest for the farmer as well as the fields, and of course his faithful cat, which makes an appearance in many of Darius's paintings. And this one is unique because there's also a dog in the picture. So I don't want Aviva to be away because I have something special for her, her interest in coming up in just a moment. Because the Shemitah, of course, is something that is commanded in the Torah, as we'll be reading, but it's also something that is carried out, and there are groups, in particular Haredi groups, who are promoting everyone to observe the sabbatical year. This unplowed field in Israel, marked with a sign, notes the most recent Shemitah year, 5782, on the Hebrew calendar, which spanned 2021 and 2022. And one moment, I have to check on one thing here. Yes, okay, good. Back to where we were.
And it's not to be confused with the Shmata year, which
This is the day for technical difficulties. There we go. That's the year. Let's see, where were we? The year 5782. The next one comes up in 5789, which begins in 2028. Though the groups that promote observing the sabbatical year take it very seriously, they also remind us to find the joy in it.
תכירו את ערן. ערן העצן. כבר שנים שערן מתייצב מדי בוקר על קו המרוץ. מרוץ החיים. ערן הוא איש משפחה למופת. בכל בוקר הוא מכין עם שמרית, אשתו האצנית, ארוחות 10 לשלושת ילדיהם הקטנים. ובזמן ששמרית פוצחת ממרוץ משלה, ערן ממהר להקפיץ את הקטן אל גן הילדים בטרם ייסגר השער. כך בכל בוקר ערן מצליח לאחר רק במעט לעבודה. ערן עובד ועובד, ותוך כדי עבודה גם חוטף משהו לארוחת צהריים. הוא ממשיך בסערה בדרכו. אחת לשנה, ערן יוצא לשירות מילואים ממושך. הוא לא שוכח לטלפן הביתה לספר שהכל בסדר. ולנסות לפייס את הבוס שנמאס לו שרק לערן קוראים למילואים. בטרם ייסגר הבנק עוד יספיק לשכנע את ריקי המנהלת לאשר לו שוב את החריגה באוברדרפט. לאסוף את הילדים מהחוגים כי השערה זה חשוב, לנשק בחטף את שמרית כי האהבה זה חשוב, להשליך את הפלסטיק על המחזורית כי סביבה זה מאוד חשוב, ולהתייצב במכון הכושר, כי העיקר הבריאות, אתם יודעים. לערן העצן שלנו אין רגע דל. אין לו זמן לקחת אוויר. אין לו רגע אחד לעצור ולנשום. ואולי, ערן יגלה שאפשר אחרת. לפחות אחת ל7 שנים.
שנת השמיטה היא ההזדמנות של כולנו לעצור ולבחור מחדש ברוח, במשפחה ובסביבה.
היכנסו לאתר איי שמיטה או חפשו אותנו בפייסבוק שמיטה ישראלית והצטרפו גם אתם לשינוי כללי המשחק של מרוץ החיים.
It's like having a commercial. And now back to our story, back to the art. New York-based artist and educator Yehoshua Hooper draws on Kabbalistic influences for his Behar piece.
Part of my creative process is that when I read the text, I usually get like these flashes or these visions or like these visuals that kind of accompany me on my journey. And when I was going through the text, and it was a nice little ride, but I wasn't getting that initial flash that usually I receive when I'm getting deep into something. And so thankfully, like after a conversation with friends, I decided, something, thinking of the time, Lag BaOmer, I feel like I need to look at Behar and the Zohar. And so I pulled out the Zohar and I looked at a particular part of blowing the shofar on the Yoel, on the Jubilee. And there's this concept of what is this release, the setting free. And as I started to read it, all of a sudden, I just got into that process where I just saw the image right into my mind. And I just stopped everything and I started to sketch it out and draw.
Apologies to everyone that I muted. We had an echo here, and now I can't hear Alan either. So,
There we go. Now you should be able to hear me.
Okay.
So in his piece, I was trying to find that echo before, and that's why I didn't get the piece up quickly enough. But in his piece, he's got the shofars in the four corners, representing the return to Jerusalem from the four corners of the earth, and the text is the promise, and you shall do my statutes and my laws, you shall keep them and do them, and you shall dwell in the land securely. Rising at the bottom of the image is a banner rising from the mountain for which the parashah is named, the banner being held high with the letter Shin, the four-pronged version that is typically used on tefillin. This bit of handiwork is from experimental and performance artist Sarah Del Young, whose sometimes whimsical photographs regularly appear in Jewish publications, especially this one, in the Forward daily newspaper. If fields can be left fallow, with no pruning or trimming, why not fingernails? Society expects us to polish and shine every aspect of ourselves, but, she asks, what if there was a year of rest from the pruning of both nails and self? The beauty standards. So she gives us the Shemitah cure. There are several famous quotes in the parashah, but the one perhaps best known to Americans is on the Liberty Bell, on display opposite the Independence Hall in Center City, Philadelphia. The bell, cast at a British foundry some 2 decades before its famed association with the Declaration of Independence, includes a quote from Behar. You can see Lev for Leviticus 25 in Roman numerals, verse 10, and the words, proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. That's the King James Bible version, but according to the translation by Robert Alter, the word deror, which we'll see in the first part of the reading this morning, is more correctly interpreted as release, as in a release from or moratorium on debts and indenture. It's a double parsha this week, and the second one is no slouch when it comes to memorable quotes. Huntsville, Alabama artist, educator, and environmentalist Star Weems illuminates Behar-Bechutokai with splashes of rain, drawing on a passage we read at services, usually read by Yehuda, promising rains in their season, and the land will give its yield, and the tree of the field will give its fruit. The second part of the promise illustrated by Joanne Fink in her Bechutokai art. But along with the promises of rain and sunshine and abundant harvests, the parashah also gives us a stern, to put it mildly, stern warning about terrible punishment if the laws are not obeyed. The tochecha, chastisement or admonishment, which is the section that artist and comparative religion scholar Michelle Bentzman chose for her stark image in Women of the Book.
I chose to illustrate Bechutokai, and I focused especially on the Tochacha. And my main motivation in choosing this parashah was that I find it exceedingly difficult. It sort of presents a God that we don't necessarily want to look at, the God that is the punisher, the God that is the destroyer, the one who commands us to obey, and the one who inspires deep, deep awe. I wanted to spend some time with my fear and try to understand what it is that compels me to look and what it is that compels me to turn away, and where is that distinction. And I sort of was hoping that I could present that to others who were viewing my work. I chose to do a sort of anatomical version of the mouth. Anatomical because I've long been very fascinated by anatomical drawings and the sort of pursuit of taking something that is hidden within the body and revealing it with various, levels of success throughout history. And I chose the mouth because it's such a multivalent symbol. It is that which eats, it crushes, it swallows, it consumes, but it also is that which sings and laughs and kisses and can speak beautiful, transformative words. And so this sort of dual relationship of generative to destructive felt like the right sort of way of conceiving of the Tochacha, and to be able to sort of let it have this more light silver lining, perhaps.
So that's Michelle Bentzman, her piece from the Women of the Book, and that is our art for this double parashah, Behar and Bechutokai. Technical difficulties and all.
That was beautiful, Alan. Thank you.
Work better in rehearsal. But you, Aviva, you said you wanted a team like Iran?
A what?
You said you wanted a team like Iran in that little clip from Israel.
No, I didn't write anything.
Oh, that was.
That was me.
Aviva. I mean, you.
The other
Okay.
Aviva, yeah. Huh, I can't see any of the chat. Isn't that weird? I know there was, oh, there it is, okay. Yeah, okay.
So.
Okay, somebody passed away, let's see. Dan Levitt, who was beset by,
You said all those Misha Baraks for him.
I know. To no avail. I wanted you to see my good friend Danny Levitt, who passed away. Beautiful, beautiful person. And I hate cancer. And it does make me wonder about the Misha Barach. And the utility, we say it, we pray. But again, in my life, I've experienced disappointment with prayers not being answered, which is part of life. I understand, but it's unfortunate. Leaves 2 boys, beautiful wife, widow, just a great guy.
I think you may have just given us a subject for when we resume Judaism 101, Craig.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is it's a very complex and interesting concept. Sometimes we say Misha Berach for ourselves when we say it for other people, and it's complicated. I think this is a very good subject. I'm going to start studying up on it for when we resume. Thank you for I'm sorry for your personal loss, and for his family, that's not anything that can be changed. And yet people continue to live after loss, and how they continue to live is a miracle. How they continue to thrive is its own kind of miracle.
Yeah, it's interesting. Everybody called him Lev, and we're reading from Leviticus. So,
yeah. Because lev in Hebrew is the word for heart, but it's spelled differently. From Levi it's a different spelling, but a lot of people whose name is Lev, is that your family's name? Okay. The concept of being tied, where your name defines you, has always been kind of an interesting thing. So the word Lev in Hebrew, if someone is named Lev, you wonder, are they Levites, and then the name come from there, or is that a name attributed to them because of how they walk through life and how people recognize them, right? And the concept of how we all have three names: the one that we were named by our parents, the one that everybody knows us by, and the one we make for ourselves. So Lev, may his memory be to us all a blessing.
Thank you.
Well, so we say Misha Berach to Craig's broken heart.
Thank you.
But I
And
was going to
just
say this time the Misha Berach is for the survivors, his family, and his friends. It's a tough one. Since you just brought this up, something happened last night. I watched a clip, because Stephen Colbert is coming to an end, and they had a YouTube where all the other hosts asked him questions. One of them was, "What's the most important question you remember asking anybody on your show?" He started this thing where he called the Colbert questionnaire. Anybody who watches him, he said, "Now you'll be fully known." Well, that started because he was having a conversation with Keanu Reeves, and the subject came up, and he said, "What do you think happens to us after we die?" And Keanu Reeves said that the people who loved us will remember us. And he thought that was such a beautiful answer. And out of that, he decided to ask every guest. But that is a beautiful answer. And that's our grieving process and why we do yard sites and all that. So the memory lingers on, as they say.
However, sometimes people are remembered for all the horrible things they've done as well.
Yeah.
Well, be that as it may, I'm looking at our screen, and Misha Berach going out to Sarah, and to Heather, and to Vic. And
Thank you so much.
who else? Say, if you need a Misha Berach, we'll say one for you.
My nephew, Joey.
My sister, Chaya. My brother-in-law, Benjamin.
My mother-in-law, Diane.
My brother-in-law, Charles Lightdale.
Fred Horowitz.
And I know Marilyn can't be with us today. She might be on Facebook for a little while, so we should back to Marilyn. Let's see, others in our community, Mike and Jan. And, okay, my brain hasn't expanded yet today, so fill in.
Barry.
Barry.
It's 4:00 here already, and mine hasn't expanded, so I'm going to be sipping my coffee while I talk to you.
Okay, let's do the Misha Berach.
Ready?
And then,
Let's add Roz Cohn.
yes, thank you.
May the substance one's help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misha Berach Imotenu. Happy Mother's Day. Makor habracha Liotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
have a wonderful cacophony of
Adonai.
this. Baruch atah
Atah
Adonai
Adonai
Eloheinu
Eloheinu
melech
melech haolam
asher
asher
kidshanu
kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
All right, Heather, I'm going to have you start us off because I know you won't be here for the whole thing. So we're actually going to start with a small section of just lines 1 through 7, Alan, and then we'll take bigger chunks.
Okay, here we go. And the Lord spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai, saying, Speak to the Israelites, and you shall say to them, When you come into the land that I'm about to give you, the land shall keep a Sabbath to the Lord. 6 years you shall sow your fields, and 6 years you shall prune your vineyard and gather it in its yield. And in the 7th year, there shall be an absolute Sabbath for the land, a Sabbath to your Lord. Your field you shall not sow, and your vineyard you shall not prune. The aftergrowth of the harvest you shall not reap, and the grapes of your untrimmed vines you shall not pick. There shall be an absolute Sabbath for the land. And the last Sabbath shall be the food for you, and for your male slave, and for your slave girl, and for your resident hirelings who sojourn with you. And for your cattle and for the beasts that are on your land, and its yield shall be for food. Okay.
Okay. Just because there's so many places we can stop, but let's just set this up. So first of all, this is a double parashah. And to my mind, it is the only place where it's really appropriate that it be a double parashah because it almost seems like it should be one. So there's that. Oh, sorry. So what stands out here? Does anything stand out visually about the beginning of this? Arnie, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. To me, the thing that struck me is this doesn't seem like good farming husbandry practices. If you've ever farmed, you know that you just can't leave fruit on a tree and not harvest it because you're going to have to clean it up when it hits the ground because of the damage and stuff. Marauding animals, insects, disease, other things, right, that will affect the tree later on. I think that the answer would be to rotate your crops instead of leaving it fallow to be, the proper technique that God might have instructed us to do.
So actually in the writing, there's no particular indication that what you're saying is not the case. The idea of fallow does not mean all fallow all the time for all people all over the world. There's definitely ways to interpret it, and the scientific aspect that you're bringing in is definitely one way of looking at it. I'm going to call on you. I've got a couple of things to say, but I want to hear other people first. So what you're saying does not negate the words because they don't specify all that detail. Okay, you have to go ahead.
Well, this is the beginning of the introduction of the concept of Shemitah, which is giving the land the rest. However, traditionally, this was also a time where the poor who never actually were doing the farming, but were gleaning the edges of the fields, would get all of it. So I think it calls into question what ends up being the definition of ownership of land, the line between being poor and not poor, which doesn't really come up. And there's an unreality to the whole thing as well, which we'll see. I won't bring it up later, but the idea of forgiving debts, which goes along with the Jubilee, which is we're leading to the 7 times 7 plus 1 kind of thing. I am a farmer in my heart and soul, Arnie, and I know exactly what you're talking about. But we're also aware when we moved here, we left a pantry full of probably, I don't even think I'm exaggerating, 500 quarts of food. We just left them in the pantry because our take on it was always to save enough for more than a year's worth of food. In reality, this whole thing is not 1 year of Shemitah. Then there's the year after where you have to actually grow it out, and you don't get it until at the end of that. So it ends up being 9 years, not really 7 at all. So it's a stretch.
I think that would depend on what you're growing and what you're tending. If you're
Sure.
talking about trees, it's one thing, grain, it's another thing, cattle, it's another thing, so each one has different farming practices that you've got to keep it going, right? So, and I don't know, it just makes more sense to me that they would do rotation, or you leave that one field fallow for a year, but you could still work on another field. It would be at one stage, and the third field would be at a different stage, and that would be better farm management.
Sarah, go ahead.
Well, first of all, this is only in Israel, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you can't apply it to everywhere else. But there's also another whole school of thought that if you just let nature take care of everything, it will take care of everything, even disease. It will regulate itself. So
It does call into question our modern farming practice, which tend to be
Right.
monocrop. And monocropping is not, disease goes into monocrops.
So if you just let nature take its course with storms and, arid periods, that it will actually grow itself and become healthy by itself. But because we apply all these techniques to it and do all these things to it and try to control it, that's where all these other practices come into being. It's just a school of thought. And I know people that have land in Ireland and in other places on the earth that do this kind of practice, very, very little. But it's not monoculture in any way, shape, or form. It's, everything they plant a variety of trees, plants, flowers, all kinds of things. And sometimes a big storm will come through and it looks like it's devastated. But if you just leave it alone, it grows back beautifully and regulates itself.
Alan, thank you.
I was going to pick up on what Sarah had mentioned, that this applies, at least halachically, as I understand from what I found looking it up, that it only applies in Israel. It doesn't apply. It's for the land that we're being talked about and being promised. But that said, I also found some interesting references to some difficulty that some of the ultra-Orthodox have had with hydroponics. That does this actually cover, if you're growing lettuce hydroponically, what are you going to do? Are you not supposed to do that? Is you're supposed to stop on that 7th year? And apparently there've been some back and forth about whether that is exempt because it's not something that is in the ground or that is being pruned like a tree.
Yeah, we're growing meat in the laboratory. Does it apply to that?
Craig?
Well, you bring up meat, and Danny Levitt's father was a Jewish cowboy who brokered cattle from the National Western Stock Show and ranches on the Western Slope and farms on the Eastern Plains. And it's good that we have farmers like Arnie and Yehuda, because I was wondering if this letting the land go fallow every seventh year is best practices, or is it an edict just like the rules of kashrut, where we can say, well, it's for health reasons, but really it's because God said so, right? God just said so. We're trying to figure out why. Could it be that he was starting the famous Jewish sense of humor? Because when you think about it, it's 6-7. He started the 6-7 thing right there, after 6-7, and he was the originator of that long before it became popular the last couple of years.
It's hysterical.
So I'm gonna take all the fun out of this right now. Sorry.
That was really good.
That in my opinion, there are a few people who will back me up throughout history. The point of these lines is not agricultural practices. It's all about people practices. So let's look for some of the mirrors. First of all, this is another Sinai moment. Vayedaber Adonai el Moshe Behar Sinai. It doesn't just say, and God spoke to Moses saying. God spoke to Moses at Sinai saying. Okay, so that's already right there. This is like, perk your ears up. It's a Sinai moment. And then the next line, it says, when you enter the land. It doesn't say if you enter the land. It says when you enter the land. What's the first thing I assign? When you enter the land, I assign, the land shall observe a Shabbat of Adonai. The land. What is it about Shabbat that for what it does for people, right? It gives us an opportunity, look at all the various levels, an opportunity to look forward to something, both in a way that we something good that we want, but also to plan. So when you plan for Shabbat on a day of rest, you plan ahead. Like my refrigerator is full of food. I cooked a lot yesterday, right? Not orthodox, but reality is I'm busy till 1 o'clock with this, and then I've got a rehearsal. I cook on Friday for the entirety of Shabbat. I don't have to cook on Shabbat ever. And not because of Orthodox laws. It is because Shabbat is that important. The way to regroup before starting another week is to actively rest, not passively rest. Not like, 6 o'clock on Friday arrived, put down, just like they announced when we went live with electronic medical records. Everybody put down your pens. It's not that. Shabbat is an active act of resting, not a passive act of resting. So that applies to the land as well. So what does it mean agriculturally to have a year of Shemitah? There's planning involved, because let's not forget a few lines into it. The reason I stopped where we did, the things that you don't do and why, because you also have to, during that time, take care of who? Those among you. The sojourners among you. It doesn't spell out the whole thing this time, the widows and the orphans, those within you, and who else? Your animals. There's a lot of planning that goes into a year of Shemitah. So I don't think it's about agricultural practices, because I contend, my overlying principle of the whole thing of understanding Torah is that it's a people-centered thing. And how we please God is not by sitting and pining, offering, it's by how we treat each other. So those first 7 lines to me encompass all of it in a very small nutshell, if I expand it. I think Ruth Ellen had her hand in first, then Yehuda, then Arnie. That's the order I saw. Go ahead, Ruth Ellen.
And before I was going to say what I'm going to say, what you mentioned, you said for people to each other and obviously to all living things,
Sure.
not just the people.
Right.
No, I was thinking back, the fluidity of all of this, and back to Alan's point, it says only in the land of Israel. Well, why? Well, then why all the other rules are only in the land of Israel too, but we don't do it that way. I keep coming back to from the Christian point of view, again, maybe it's to distinguish themselves. The fact that the evolution of Christianity after Jesus did away with all these things is presumably because Jesus said to somebody, it's not what you put into your mouth that defiles you, it's what comes out of it. So out of that whole thing, they said we can dispense with all of this. But back to your point, I don't totally buy that. And I thought it was for health reasons, and Danny says no, but it is, I think, like you said, for our own attentiveness to it. You know, it's put in there to make us pause about everything, especially on the Shabbat, but about everything we do. That's what all the rules are. And that's, you know, getting up, laying the tefillin, every rule is just because it focuses your attention there. It's our way of meditating. This is how I see it. But I do wonder sometimes in terms of applying it in modern times, if you're going to say are these rules for the people, you know, and of course, at the time this was supposedly happening and written, there was no diaspora, there was no temple destroyed in exile and all that. So I don't think we're ever going to get the total answer.
Go ahead, Yehuda. Sorry. And after that, Arnie, because you just figured out how to get your hand up there. Okay, go ahead, Yehuda.
Okay, I bring up two things. The first thing is that I think the actual Hebrew is not what you read when you enter. It's rather ki tavu, meaning because you will. You're gonna do this in the future, and then it goes into a present tense. Not that it makes that much difference in the translation, but we use the word when back earlier in the holiness code to talk about the nature of the various examples that could happen. And the only one that used when was with people who are in charge, that they're going to make mistakes and they're going to mess up. It's not if you make a mistake. With those guys, it was when you make a mistake. But the other thing I would like to talk about is something I know I've said in this group before, but it's the nature of stop exercises. Stop exercises are one of the most important things we can do as human beings, because every time we consciously stop, one of the things that happen is we store energy. And when we decide to start again, we have the ability to take what we store and use that energy in some way. And therefore is a really important concept for human beings. They should not go all the time. They actually need to have stop energies so that they can store energies so that they can release them in a directed way. It allows you actually to change direction when you do a stop exercise. It allows you to enhance something that you came up with before you did the stop exercise. There are lots of things you can do once you have stored energy and you are preparing to release it.
Thank you. Arnie and then Sarah.
You know, I did think of a good farming practice that this would work with, and that is after you harvest a grain field, it's really good to graze cattle on it that eat the stubble and fertilize the land. So I don't know if that practice would be allowed under this, but you wouldn't be actively growing, you know, the Amur wheat, but your sheep would still be hanging out. And I don't know if anyone has an opinion on that, if that's considered still husbandry, letting the sheep eat the stubble. And I was also wondering if they reenact this in Israel and make it a rule in modern day, does that mean on the seventh year, the Haredi wouldn't be able to panhandle at the Kotel?
All right. No answer required. Sarah?
Well, I think it does have something to do with agriculture too. I think it has both meanings. Which what the point of Eva brought up, but also, you know, are we going to say that God doesn't have any rule over nature? Then we run into problems too, because of the Garden of Eden, the splitting of the sea, you know, the miracles of Moishe, all of these things. And also looking into the future, the belief that not so much, not when Mashiach comes, but after that, that there will be another time when God will cause nature to become different. So it's something that we have to really think about. What do we believe actually that God does have some, or has had, or has shown at some period control over nature? Because if God is making these laws about how to use nature and when not to use nature, when to let it rest, what are we saying here? Are we saying that we don't believe that, or we do believe it? So it's kind of a double-edged sword here.
Thank you. Anybody else have, oh, Ruth Ellen, go ahead.
No, I just feel like from that perspective, you only get that question if you think of God sitting up there on a throne or something. I mean, to me, God is nature. These are the Shekhinah or whatever, the mother nature, earth. It's one aspect of the eternal, you know. So that's what it says. If you trust it, that's another way of saying, let it lie fallow, to Sarah's point earlier, because nature will take care of itself. Well, that's saying Hashem has taken care of it, you know. It's human beings' intervention that has thrown off the balance. And if you just let it go and go and go, we see what happens when you let it go and go and go for millennia, and then an industrial revolution and on and on. We get so out of balance, it takes too long for it to rebalance itself on its own.
Yeah, and I don't think you need to think of it as somebody up there controlling it. It just is, just like God just is. We don't know what God is.
So then that's why I don't understand why you need to question it, or is it a rhetorical question? It is in fact saying, what do we believe? I don't know if we could all.
So the question is, do we believe that the Red Sea parted right at that moment, that was written from the beginning of time, that would happen? What is it exactly that we believe?
Is it important?
I think it is when you consider Mashiach, or when you consider the later days and what you believe about that.
Well, some people don't.
And some people do.
I think we should keep reading. We have 2 parashot to get through.
Okay, I just want to address what Sarah is saying. So Sarah, there's not anything that is like absolute. When we start talking about things that are absolute, we lose a lot of humanity in the process. And then we also tend to gain people who will define for us what absolute is. So I think this struggle with these concepts is a very
it is a concept.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the Garden of Eden,
Mm-hmm.
where everything was supposedly perfect before Eve ate the fruit of the tree. So that concept is that, they could have lived for who knows how long. When you look, and some people say in the Torah, Noah didn't really live for 900 years, or we don't know what that 900 years was, and so lived for 750 years. You have all these like long lifetimes. What does that mean? Does that mean that nature was so perfect that they actually could have lived that long? That the water was so clean, the air was so fresh, the food was so pure that they could have lived that long? I mean, there's, you're saying we struggle with these concepts, and yes, we do, but I think they're important to struggle with. That's just,
I agree, and I think that the real, I mean, first of all, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but the concept of there being a perfection that was ruined by humans, that troubling in itself. I think God would have been bored for the rest of eternity if people lived just perfectly, beautifully, in a Garden of Eden. So,
Right. Okay, so
do we need God more than God needs us? That's an eternal question. Heschel deals
it
with that.
is. It
Right,
is.
look-
And I don't think that these biblical stories are necessarily to be taken literally. But well, when
No,
we go
I
on,
agree.
when
And
we go on in this parsha, okay, and we look at what is said about isn't there a part in this parsha where it talks about trees that didn't bear fruit will bear fruit? I mean, isn't that in this parsha? So
I think
it's
so.
there's a lot of things in this parsha that that as I was looking at them, I was thinking about this and about the Garden of Eden. And even though the world isn't like that now, are those things to be taken literally, or are they allegorical?
Allegorical.
Allegorical.
Let's answer that question as we go. We're
Yeah.
going to read a chunk now,
Can I just say one thing about what she just said?
Of course, go ahead.
I think that I think the way the Torah is set up from the very, very beginning is to establish a tradition of talking story, of telling midrash. And that's the reason why, very specifically, they're weird ages, and why stories in some ways are beyond belief, because that's the way they're meant to be, that we are meant to talk about those things from the get-go. And I think that's what's established from the beginning of the study. And you get more serious when you actually have a Moses who lived to 120 years, which is even just on the edge of what we're able to live right now. But I think the establishment up until that point has a tremendous amount of midrash in it to establish a tradition that we're following now.
So what do you do with Noah's Ark and the animals that were on Noah's Ark?
Midrash.
They didn't eat each other, right?
Midrash. It's all story.
But they couldn't have eaten each other.
But we're not meant to take it that way.
I understand.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that you just said right now these are allegorical things,
Right.
and I'm agreeing with you. I think
Right.
that these are allegories are different. Another word for midrash.
Still, you have to ponder upon what did those animals eat? They must have been eating hay or straw or whatever Noah put on the ark. Or so you're just saying that's just a story. That didn't
That's what I'm
really
saying.
happen.
I'm saying it's a story that we're meant to talk about it, and we're meant to learn from our talking and conversation. Nothing is set in stone. It's all midrash.
And I get that, but I'm not so sure that that's the correct
I think that we have to move away from understanding that there's only one correct way to understand, because
Right.
that is very self-limiting. And in that spirit, we're going to read through line 20 till the end of line 22. Who wants to take on a little chunk? Well,
I'll read if you want.
Sure, go ahead.
And you shall count 7 Sabbaths of years, 7 years times 7 years, 7 times, and the days of the 7 Sabbaths of years shall come to 49 years. And you shall send round a blasting ram's horn in the 7th month, on the 10th of the month, on the day of atonement. You shall send round a ram's horn through all your lands. And you shall hallow the 50th year and proclaim a release in the land to all its inhabitants. A jubilee it shall be for you, and you shall go back, each man to his holding, and each man to his clan. You shall go back. It is a jubilee. The 50th year it shall be for you. You shall not sow, and you shall not reap its aftergrowths, and you shall not pick its untrimmed vines, for it is a jubilee. It shall be holy for you. From the field you may eat its yield. In this jubilee year you shall go back, each man to his holding. And when you sell property to your fellow or buy from the hand of your fellow, you shall not defraud one another. By the number of years after the jubilee you shall buy from your fellow, and by the number of years of yield he shall sell to you. The larger the number of years, the more you shall pay for its purchase, and the smaller the number of years, the less you shall pay for its purchase, since he is selling you the number of yields. And you shall not defraud each other, and you shall fear your God, for I am the Lord your God. And you shall do my statutes and my laws, and you shall keep them. You shall keep and do them, and you shall dwell on the land securely. And the land will give forth its fruits, and you will eat its fullness, and you will dwell securely on it. And should you say, what shall we eat in the 7th year if we do not sow and do not gather in our yield? I have charged my blessing for you in the 6th year, and it shall produce yield for 3 years. And you shall sow in the 8th year and eat of the old crop until the 9th year, until its yield comes, and you shall eat the old. There's Yehuda's answer right there.
Right, there's one answer to that conundrum. Arnie.
So this reminded me of an experience when I started in real estate. The only ones that would lend on Bishop Estate land back then were the Federal Land Bank. But they lent this guy a 30-year mortgage, and he only had 15 years left on his lease. And they called me on the 15th year to ask me, what I thought they should do. And I said, you're SOL. I mean, the lease is up, the mortgage is still there. You lost. That's all there is to it. So they stopped lending on Bishop Estate land altogether, which was unfortunate for all the farmers in Kona.
Yehuda? You have to unmute.
I read about something very interesting this morning, which was something I was not familiar with, but it's definitely part of the whole concept of what the Torah does in shaping our understanding of law. There is a concept called prosbul. Prosbul was originally the one of the original loopholes in law that was created by Hillel, who I am named after. And Hillel understood that in the whole Jubilee and the forgiving of debts and all that, it wasn't going to be something that would work in greater society because people would not lend when it came near to the 50 years. So therefore, people didn't have the access to funds that they needed. So what Hillel worked out was a workaround, as they do in Israel, put your finger on your ear, which was that at some point, instead of this being a personal transaction, the government or the institutions ended up owning. Now, these laws did not apply to institutions. They only applied to individuals. So if you transfer the ownership of your land to an institution, all of a sudden this doesn't hold, which allowed people to continue to lend knowing that they could get their money back. Prosbul was the first legal loophole that I understand, and it created a whole bunch of other loopholes moving forward.
Yeah, people put their land in trust now to change an entity.
Well, also, look, we ended up with this house, for instance. This house was a foreclosure. Who owned this house? Not the original guy who lost it. It was owned by the government. And we got the house from the government.
The bank.
No, the government. Fannie Mae. That's a government entity, not the bank.
Okay.
I think this is all interesting, but what the heck is a financial transaction doing in the Torah at this particular point? Why was it important to have that little side trip?
Very good question. Thank you. So there's I forget, I think it's Rashi, who posed a question. He says, why is Shemitah even talked about at Sinai? Okay, because Shemitah, we have to look at it as an economic maybe it's agricultural too, but when we expand it to the 7 times 7 plus 1 for the year of Jubilee, it becomes an economic structure. So let me pose that the why of it all, and again, somebody please try to talk me out of this. You're the I see your hand up, you can put it down, I'll call on you in a minute. Why? The why of all of this is what we are concerned with. Someone talk me out of this notion that it's all about people treating people well. In a nutshell, in the most simplistic terms. So why, as Rashi would say, what the heck is Shemitah doing here in Sinai? Why are we talking about this now? Why is it even relevant? Okay, so there's this whole school of thought that I think says, well, because everything that happened in Sinai is a nutshell for everything else. So you can take like even just the 10 Commandments and expand them to include everything we're talking about in terms of legal, moral, ethical obligations of humans to humans, period. And then we can just sit back and say, yeah, and there are people who spend their life studying, so we'll just sit back and say what they say about it. That's one concept, but it's not satisfying. There's something very lacking there. But somebody talked me out of this. All of these things have to do with people living safely in their land. What is their land? Well, it's different for everybody. The commonality is that if people don't live in security in their land, what do? They kill others. We have enough history to know that that's true. When people feel like they are not safely living in their land, in their realm, they do horrible things to other people. So ask your question again, Alan, why? And ask it same or differently. Ask it again.
Well, what you're just saying, I mean, my question again is what is it doing here in this point, especially that little the after we got that introduction of what you need to do to protect or to preserve the land or respect the land. And by the way, if you're going to sell it this way and you get to make sure that there's, you're compensating somebody appropriately, it seems like that's the fine print that it would be in a contract and not necessarily in a guideline for a community, which is what we're getting here. What's going on at this point in the Torah is how do you build a community? And so I think that's what you're saying is that's the answer there.
I think it's so for me, I have to say, and I'm not trying to be overly simplistic, but to me, that's the only answer. It's the only reason I can put the lima'an, the whatever for. I say whatever for. What for? So that, right? Because who's really harmed? If you are doing a business dealing, a land dealing, and you're trying to get a little bit more out of it, you're cheating somebody, who are you harming? I think you're harming your soul. I think you're harming yourself. And when your soul is hurting, man, is it easy to hurt other people. We know that from history. Anyhow, that's all I'm saying. I'm actually muting myself. I'm calling on Yehuda, Arnie, and Matan in that order.
Okay, so let's be real that a lot of this is, God is talking about the land he's going to give. So I think that there is, from the very beginning, there's an attempt to make sure that everything is equal. And that's what makes for your ability to live an appropriate standard of living, that things stay equal. This is really the opposite of like communism, where everything is, you don't own the land. In this case, we own the land and we're to take care of it. And if we take care of it, then we're given all the benefits of what it is. That's a pretty important thing. And that's why it's here, because all of this is about the land I'm going to give you. It's about land. It's about land. That's why we're talking about land.
Arnie?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if this is God's way of telling the Jewish people, you guys are involved in agriculture as your economy right now, but someday you're going to be great businessmen and you're going to have to figure out workarounds. So this is an opportunity to think about workarounds and develop your brains that way.
Well, that's the loophole that Hillel came up with. That was definitely a business workaround.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Exactly. I mean, if this could be God's intent, all the rest of it is just the pathway.
Thank you. Matan? Oh, you have to unmute.
A lot of this is just it's covenant. I do this, you do that. I do this, you do that. It's transactional. As to the nature of it, something is very special about 7 in our Torah. There are 7 days of the week. The Shemitah is the 7th year. The Jubilee is the 7th of the 7th. There's something special about 7th. What Hebrew letter is the 7th letter? Is there anything there in the numerology?
Yes. I don't do numerology, but in terms of root words, Sheva.
Sheva.
They're Sheva. It's the term for the week. Shavua is a week. Shabbat, it's the same root word. Okay. And also ceasing, to cease. So Shabbat, the act of observing Shabbat is not a passive one, like, whew, week's over, I don't have to do anything. It's not that. It's an active. Deciding to do Shabbat is an active decision. How it manifests is different for all people, but there's a clear decision, and it was God's decision. It doesn't say that God just refrained from doing any work, right? It's Shavat Vayinafash. Took a break, ceased, went on strike, and refreshed. Vayinafash. Okay?
Rest your soul, rest your soul.
Right.
Isn't the 7th letter Zion?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, that's significant. Sion, Zion, and the whole meaning of Israel,
Yeah, it's also the word for penis.
There's a lot, I mean, the act of looking for meaning is just, that's what we're called for. I mean, there are words, I can point to words, the word al tonu ish et achiv, that's in line 14. It says, when you buy from a neighbor, land, or I guess anything, when you sell property to your neighbor or buy any from your neighbor, you shall not wrong one another. That word tonu, that's in the Levitical code of holiness. That it's that important. Yes, it is a business transaction, but the taking advantage of is not part of it. And actually, so the whole thing of Jubilee, Matan, the whole issue of Jubilee, the 50th year, it's an opportunity to correct wrongs. Let's look right now at the world we're living in and say that extreme wealth is a difficult, it's a difficult concept for us to absorb. Extreme wealth means that somebody can be so wealthy they can affect change more in a more streamlined way than other people, but it also gives them more power. And so do you get to be extremely wealthy? Have you checked that every way that has gotten you to extreme wealth, you haven't taken advantage of someone along the way? And then let's say you check that box and you say, yep, I'm pretty sure I didn't. But then what do you do with it? That's a human decision. And we are usurping the place of God in the world by assuming that we can do better by first accumulating wealth. And then, well, see, I'm doing good things with it. I'm making all this available. I'm curing diseases. I'm doing that. But that's saying a human is taking on a mantle of godliness. And that is not what we are supposed to do. So the 50th year is supposed to, in its concept, prevent that from happening. Because on the 50th year, obligations have to be resolved, slaves have to be freed. Now, does it really happen in real life? Not in that overly simplistic way, because that's a different form of chaos. But it's an acknowledgement that as you move through, life, these are the things you have to always keep with you. That's what God demands of us. I don't know. I can't unread that. See in the chat. Oh,
I
yeah,
don't think that there ever is a strong historical record of this actually being put into practice. I think that there are idealists who wrote this down, and there were reasons why they wrote it. You know, it's this trying to make sure that the oligarchs don't rule, you know, trying to make sure that people are not perpetually in some state of slavery, that, you know, we can give everybody a new start, you know, so everybody's starting on equal ground. I think that that was, you know, it's very idealistic in its own way. Matan?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I don't know if there's any evidence in biblical times, but certainly in modern times, the communist revolution in Russia, one of its goals was to redistribute the land. And the Chinese revolution in China, they took landlords out and shot them in the head. I mean, you know, just to affect redistribution. So it looks like there's a tension that builds up if there's not a redistribution of resources from time to time.
There is a difference, though, what I said before, that there, who owns the land, and here, who owns the land. The people very obviously own the land in the Torah. It is not the government that owns the land. The only reason that you would use the government is to get around the thing of lending, you know, of lending money out. You know, the workaround that Hillel did. Other than that, the government would not own the land. And the government, and even once that workaround is done and you reset the clock for the beginning of Jubilee again, then you don't need the government to own anything.
Alan?
This discussion of the 50 year of the Jubilee makes me start thinking about something that Sarah touched on earlier about the ages and the you know, whether we believe these numbers. But 50 is a significant span of time, and if we can imagine that in an era when they didn't have medicine or modern medicine and didn't have protection or protection against recovering from things, simple things like fractures, 50 years could be a lifetime.
Yeah.
Just
just imagine you were a slave at 5 and all of a sudden you're released at 55.
Yeah. That's a time when your productive years are gone. If the life expectancy is, say, 60, if we look realistically, if we forget the numbers that are written down here, and say, you know, what would be a realistic assessment, 60, 70 years perhaps, and 6, 7, we're back to that again. But it just seems like that the span of time would be significant. It would not only be a new generation, but it would also be the end of an older generation.
It also is an economic opportunity. 50 years of accumulating wealth, you've had an opportunity to do good with that. But you've also, usually, if you think of it in economic terms, if there's extreme wealth here, there's poverty somewhere else. And it's not that resources are finite, but the control of resources is at issue. That's the issue, is what do you do with it? Do you control it? Do you need first to have your name plastered on every building that you give your money to? Or do you need to do good? And can the two live together simultaneously? Because
we have that exact situation today.
Sure.
Maybe this is taking on generational wealth.
Another very important thing, because the issue of generational wealth says, as we read it in this country, it says that it's who you are that prevents you. The society prevents you from achieving that because of who you are and what your circumstances of your birth, things that you have no control over. And at the 50th year, there's a point of ability to correct. Somebody had their hand up.
You know, I read about this man named George who referenced what was referred to as a single tax system. It was in the early 20th century, and what he proposed was that the government could only tax property but not labor. And that allowed people to develop their own resources, but that the property was for the public, and that the taxes that were accrued from rents in effect paid for the government to do its infrastructure work, et cetera, et cetera. But if you were earning stuff on your own, that was separate. And that was not to be taxed. That was something that based on your own work and your own ability to produce, that's what you got.
Are we ready for another chunk? This time I'm arbitrarily dividing it. We're going to go we're going to go 10 to line 38. I'm sorry, Alan, I'm confusing you. All right, who wants to read to line 38, through line 38, I should say.
I can.
All right.
And the land shall not be sold irreversibly, for mine is the land, and for you are sojourning settlers with me. Well, that's really interesting. And in all the land of your holdings, you shall allow a redemption for the land. Should your brother come to ruin and sell his holdings, his redeemer who is related to him shall come and redeem what his brother sold. And should a man have no redeemer and his land attain and find enough for its redemption, he shall reckon the years it was sold and give back the difference to a man to whom he sold, and he shall go back to his holdings. And if his hand cannot find enough to pay him back, what he shall hold, what he sold shall be in the hands of the buyer till the Jubilee year, and it shall be released in the Jubilee, and he shall come back to his holdings. And should a man sell a dwelling in a walled town, its redemption shall be the end of the year of its sale. A year of redemption shall be. And if it is not redeemed by the time a full year has elapsed for him, the house and the town that has the wall shall pass over irreversibly to its buyer for his generations. It shall not be released until the Jubilee. And the houses and the hamlets that have no walls all around shall be reckoned as part of the land's open fields. They shall have redemption and be released in the Jubilee. And as to towns of the Levites, the houses of the towns of their holdings, the Levites shall have redemption forever. And what is redeemed of the Levites, the sale of house and the town of his holdings, shall be released in the Jubilee, for the houses of the Levites' town are their holdings in the midst of the Israelites. And the unenclosed fields of their towns shall not be sold, for it is an everlasting holding for them. And should your brother come to ruin and his hand buckle under you, you shall hold him as a sojourning settler, and he shall live under you. You shall not take from him advance interest or accrued interest, and you shall fear your God. You shall not give him your silver for advance interest, and for accrued interest you shall not give him your food. I am the Lord, your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to give you the land of Canaan to be God for you. God, I'm glad I'm not practicing real estate back then. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Actually, that's interesting that these lines fell to you to read, Arnie.
Yeah, it would be impossible to wade through those transactions.
So I want to, Matan said this in a nutshell, but let's always keep this in the back of the mind. We're talking here about the covenant. A covenant is a legal term. It's a contract. Now, a contract between people is different than a covenant with God. And that is what we're talking about here is it's a greater concept. In other words, you can take these words and expand them to actually mean something very specific. In a specific business dealing, pick a line here, okay? And actually, Yehuda, I'm surprised you didn't jump out and say something about the Levites. You can still. I mean, that's your territory.
Well, did we even know that there were Levite cities before? Not really.
I'm not sure. I think we have, but I won't attest to it. And actually, Matan put something in the chat. Let me see. Okay, advanced interest versus accrued interest. There's some uncertainty as to the precise differentiation between these two kinds of interest. The former term, yeah. Okay, so neshech is the etymology meaning bite, and the latter, marbit, comes from the verb that means to multiply, and ribit is the term for, I just lost the English word. When you pay a mortgage, interest. Marbit
Interest.
is the interest, okay? And that is, so in a business term, there is gain to be made by being a lender. In the Jewish tradition, a Jewish lender to a Jewish lender should not charge interest. We talked about this last week, that historically, in countries where Jews sojourned, for the lack of a better term to use, they were sometimes put in positions that they were lenders in order to multiply the wealth of that particular country they were in, or the kings or whoever the rulers were, to the detriment of their standing in society. In other words, they helped to amass wealth, but could be blamed for what it did to society.
Well,
Yeah,
they
I'll
couldn't
explain
find
the way it
guilt.
worked. I'll explain the way it worked. I said it last week too. The money, for the most part, resided with the wealthy lords. They were not allowed by church rule. They were not allowed to lend money and make interest. How the Jews were not allowed to lend money and make interest on Jews, but they were allowed to make interest on non-Jews. So the lords would give money to the Jews to lend out to the non-Jews, and then they would collect that, be blamed for it in effect, and then they'd have to pay back the lords.
That's not how it always happened. The Jews weren't allowed to join the guilds. They had very little other ways to make money. So they would.
I'm not saying that.
Let me
This is
finish.
just explaining. Okay.
So they would collectively pool their money, kind of like a credit union, and lend to these monarchs and other people, and get interest. And that was the way they could make money. And they also had a banking system internationally that they construed, where you could be a merchant in one place and get credit or goods or whatever in another place. And it was handled like an international banking system, which allowed them to flourish. Economically, they wouldn't have been able to do anything otherwise.
I was intrigued by the expression in line 35, should your brother come to ruin and his hand buckle under you. I looked in the note in the Alter translation is the verb here is more typically associated with the foot, where it has the sense of stumble, but because hand is a metonym for power, the idea is the person has suffered something we would call economic collapse. So I think that's an interesting, this whole section about how we have to support our family members in situations like this.
Thank you for bringing that up. That was the next thing I was going to veer towards. So the mention of brother implies family, but it's not solely family. It is tribal. And I think that in the that overlying concept of very early on, we're introduced to the concept, am I my brother's keeper? Number one. And then a different term, Kol Israel arevim ze laze. All of the people of Israel are responsible for one another. The term brother does not imply in any way your actual kin, like your blood kin. It really does speak to the larger concept, which is all of Israel are considered family because being the children of Abraham and Sarah. So that greater concept, and again, this is a Sinai moment, so we're not looking at the specifics. And even with them, we're talking about land holdings, specifics of what you can do and what you can't do. These are bigger. They go to that greater congregation of people who all supposedly were at Sinai, and they are all descendants of the one chosen to say, yes, I will be your covenant partner. So that's the greater implication. Though brother does not mean necessarily kin. Sarah?
I think it like views Israel as a whole family. So it is almost, it's not exactly kin, but it's kind of that broad concept of kin that, every Jew is like, we're all like in one big pond and we're all responsible for one another. So why would we charge each other interest? There's nothing wrong in and of itself. What's the Hebrew word for interest?
Rebit.
Rebit.
Yeah.
So there's nothing inherently wrong with that because, money begets money, right? But it's just, why would you charge a family member money? And if everybody's family is everybody who was at Sinai or their descendants, you're looking out for the good of each other, basically.
Right.
And not making money off of it.
And some of these laws, they're very specific to prevent a slide into poverty. They don't specifically say that, but if you can project that certain things will be the beginning of a road, a one-way road to poverty.
Right.
Which is, it's poverty is the thing to avoid. So how do you avoid that? If you see that someone is about to enter into a bad business deal, for example, if you can see that, what's your responsibility? Or if you see someone about to take advantage of someone else.
Same thing with leaving the corners of your field for the poor.
Yeah. Well, that's
to make sure. It's the same kind of concept, taking care of one another.
It's taking care of, but it's also a greater concept that says that you are doing something that will allow people to live with dignity. So leaving the corners of your field and not reaping all the way to the end is providing dignity to people who might otherwise feel at the mercy of someone.
We're not really addressing something I brought up at the very beginning, which is what constitutes the line between being someone who's in poverty and someone who's not. And some of this is not just a wealth thing, it's a poverty of soul as well. We don't, and it doesn't really go into that. It leaves that very, very, it's not even gray. It doesn't even talk about it.
Healthy soul, healthy body.
Is there an assumption that society just knows who's poor and who's not?
If you open your eyes, yeah, because you can live with blinders on, but I think that there is a very clear concept of that society does know, and it's a choice to ignore it.
I'll give a
You know-
great example. We had our neighbor in Kentucky, Dorothy. She was basically our children's surrogate grandmother. She was a righteous, God-fearing Christian, Bible Belt Christian. Dorothy never, ever, ever had money. Dorothy, she just lived on the shortest of budgets that you can imagine. And yet she would never be considered a poor person because the wealth of her soul was beyond belief.
Yeah.
She took care of everybody. And she was a go-to person to organize good things for people who needed them. So, you understand what I'm saying?
I do, Yehuda, and I think that interest-free loans is the highest form, or one of the highest forms of giving, of charity. So, when you put in like faith, hope, of all those concepts, that's what feeds a person's soul.
It's like the Crosby, Stills song, "A Different Kind of Poverty Now Upsets My Soul," right?
There you go.
Different kind of poverty now upsets my soul.
Night after sleepless night.
I walk the floor and I want to know.
Okay, you guys, that's a beautiful. That's a beautiful way to put it. Good for you.
Ruth Ellen?
Yeah, I'm sorry if I missed if somebody said something similar, but with my looking at the overreaching concepts here again. The idea of the Shemitah, the Jubilee, it brings in the fourth dimension, time. And that tells us that nothing is permanent. Like I said before in the past, I was upset that there is the idea of private property, but I actually forgot about this because there's always a reset point. Nobody can take dominion over anything that's temporal forever, or their families. And so we get, sometimes we get lost in the weeds about, this slave, or whether you can take interest from a kin and who's kin and all that. But ultimately, what it's telling humankind is life on this earth is temporal. You can not ever expect anything to be constant. There's always change. The only thing you can be sure of is that there's going to be change. And this is a way of expressing that to a nascent nation of former slaves, right? So don't get too on your high horse, and don't ever forget that anything that you earned from your own work and working the land and so on and so forth, or labor, that you did solely on your own, that you don't owe something to the people who came, to those who came before you and those who are going to come after you.
Good point.
Thank you, Arnie.
So I recently had to work with a client who asked me, he didn't really want to leave his property after he sold it, and he was wondering about having a life estate on the property. So I never, dealt with this before, and I found out there's actually actuary tables you could look at that will tell you what a life estate is based on age. But, people at the same age could have different health and vitality and live it to a different time. So I don't think it was a very perfect system by any means, and I don't think you could ever really figure out a perfect system.
The perfection of the system is less important than the concept that there is an issue that's addressed, right? So we are humans. We look for perfection and we don't find it. But the perfection is that you're looking at the issue and saying, what's the situation that benefits the person making a request without taking away the benefit of a legitimate business transaction, right? So that it says that even in this situation, there are things to consider that are not on the surface. They may be hidden under the surface. So you are not absolved from looking into them, but if you're digging deep down is for the purpose of making more profit, go a different direction. You've looked in the wrong place. If the way you're digging down and getting into nitty-gritty detail that seems impossible is because you're really trying to take into account the situation, then you're heading the right direction. And that, it's that you're not really absolved from that. If you think you found a simple answer and that simple answer happens to enrich you, but impoverish someone else, yeah. So I don't know that perfection is what we can strive for as humans, right? Perfection is probably a little bit outside of our realm of possibilities. But like, what's the end of the?
But isn't that what we're striving for, to bring, right, holiness down to earth?
Yes, we are in the holiness code. That's exactly what we're striving for. But we're human. All right, I suggest we move on. There's another big chunk. I think we'll just finish it off because there's like 2 lines that could go with the next one or this one. So we'll just go big breath. And I don't know, Ruth Ellen, you want to read with a big breath?
Did you say me?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, I'll read again. It's good for my singing. Okay. Ready? Oh. Had to get Heather's message out of the way. Okay. And should your brother come to ruin under you and be sold to you, you shall not work him the work of a slave. Like a resident hireling, he shall be under you till the Jubilee year, he shall work under you. And he shall be released from you, he and his children with him, and go back to his clan, and to his father's holdings he shall go back. For they are my slaves, whom I brought out of the land of Egypt. They shall not be sold in a slave sale. You shall not hold crushing sway over him, and you shall fear your God. And your male slave and your slave girl whom you have from the nations that are around you, from them you may buy a male slave or a slave girl. And also from the children of the settlers sojourning among them, from them and from their clan that is with them, you may buy whom they have begotten in your land, and they shall become a holding for you. And you shall hold them in estate for your children after you to inherit a holding forever. Them you may work, but your brothers, the Israelites, no man shall hold crushing sway over his brother. And should the hand of a sojourning settler with you attain means when your brother comes to ruin under you, and is sold to a sojourning settler under you, or to an offshoot of a sojourner's clan after being held, he shall have a redemption. One of his brothers may redeem him, or his uncle or his cousin may redeem him, for any of his own close kin from his clan may redeem him, or his hand may attain the means, and he shall be redeemed. And he shall reckon with his buyer from the year of his sale to him till the Jubilee year, and the silver of his sale shall be according to the number of the years, like the time of a hireling, he shall be under the other. If there are still many years, according to them, he shall pay back his redemption from the silver of his purchase. And if few years are left till the Jubilee year, he shall reckon for him according to its years, and he shall pay back its redemption. Like a hireling from year to year, he shall be under you. No one shall hold crushing sway over him before your eyes. And if he is not redeemed through any of these ways, he shall be released in the Jubilee year, and he and his children with him. For mine are the Israelites as slaves. They are my slaves who I brought out of the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. This is still troubling. It's still troubling, the idea of slaves versus hirelings now. And I remember from when we first did this at Viva, and I'm so glad you, native Hebrew speaker, that the notion of slave as it's presented here is really more like an indentured servant, and it can never be forever. But, so many people just quote that all the time as an excuse why slavery was all right. And, but still, the translations and the connotations, it's still a little bit troubling. And yet, the saving grace is that it can't be more than 49 years, right? Now, I was just thinking, however, back then, how back to Sarah's point, what did a year mean then? Maybe most people would have been dead before they would have gotten to a Jubilee year. So I don't know if that's a, it's a false sense of freedom because it's very loosely attainable. Who do you have an answer for me?
No, but I was thinking, I was part of the Back to Land movement in the 70s. It was a direct reaction to Vietnam. And I remember when I bought our farm, which then was undeveloped land, someone hadn't lived there since the 1930s. I got a letter from my grandmother that obviously she had cried over while she was writing it because there were smudge marks in the ink. And thinking, she basically was talking about the Jews didn't own land in the old country. And the fact that I'd managed to buy 120 acres was something over the top for her. And yet, as I regularly walked the property, I never thought of myself as that. I thought of myself as the protector of the property, rather. Because the property was older than I was and was going to continue after I was long gone from this earth. And I'm not sure that part of that isn't in the white spaces between the lines here. That, we definitely have prayers about taking care of the earth. I remember having conversations with some of my neighbors in Kentucky that they felt like that the Bible gave them dominion over the earth to do whatever it is they wanted and not be protectors. And that was definitely point of contention.
Ooh, we got a lot of hands. Arnie, Sarah, and then Ruth Ellen.
I was just wondering, how did they accrue that much debt that they would have to be a slave for 50 years? I mean, just think about how much money value that is for 50 years of slavery. I mean, it just seems so incredible. I mean, if you borrow a couple $100 from someone and you don't pay them back, well, maybe you work for a couple days for them, you know? So what was this, like millions of dollars that was borrowed, to have to be a slave for 50 years? It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
So looking for like exactitude and sense, it feels to me futile because just using the term 50 implies a lot. Whether it's an exact 50 years or not, it says a lot. But whether it's a little or a lot, what we're talking about here is not the amounts of time, but the treatment of the slave, with the background that at the time slavery existed. How the Israelites were instructed is not to have slaves because that was whatever the practice at the time. It's how to treat slaves. It's not. It's a very. These are hard things to read. I'll read a little passage out of the Hertz that I found helped me to put some context to it after we hear everybody. But that's what we're talking about. Is not that these people are different than other people. These Israelites are different. They have tendencies that are human tendencies, right? They have freedom to do things, but the constrictions under which they live have to do with the covenant. So that's the difference. It's not how many years. It's not any one particular thing. It is about we're talking about the treatment of the slaves here. Okay, Sarah, then Ruth Ellen.
I like what Arnie said because if you're a steward rather than an owner of a slave or land or anything, it frees you up to serve a higher purpose. And you totally, like Yehuda was saying also, it totally gives you a different perspective on your ego. It's like non-attachment, right? Your wealth doesn't become your idol, like you don't idolize it or think yourself bigger and better because you own land or you own so many servants or whatever. And, I was thinking about, I think it's the New Testament, I'm not sure, but anyway, the idea that you brought nothing into the world, and you're going to take, when you leave it, you're not going to take anything out with you either. So I like that perspective. Good way to own land, good way to have a servant. So like for today, we don't have servants, but maybe we have a house cleaner or we have somebody come into our house to fix something or repair something. And this haughtiness kind of thing, oh, I have a house cleaner, or oh, I have a this or a that. I mean, I think we can bring it down to a different level in our own everyday life, even though we don't have slaves. The people that we hire to do us a service and the way that we treat them, do we give them cookies when they leave the house? I mean, I don't know.
Well, I think we're talking about the concept that beyond the period of servitude, and let's just call it that, there's still the concept of hope. The concept of slavery, in essence, removes the concept of hope from a person. And if a person has no hope, their soul could die. So what we're talking about is there is an economic reality of the time included slavery as an economic model, or whatever term you put to it. It doesn't imply that it's fair. It doesn't imply it's good. It implies that was the reality of the time.
And you have to really look at, like, I really just listening to this parashah, thinking about Black people going through slavery and what you just said about your soul could die. I mean, their spirituality and their faith and belief is really it's amazing when you think about it. That's what really they clung to and what really brought them through some horribly difficult times. And even today with gerrymandering and all the things that are going on, I think it's their faith. The spiritual songs that they sang and what brought them close. I think just thinking about how Black people just survived all that was it was spiritual, certainly not physical.
They are the main protectors of our democracy up front.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's just crazy amazing. So expound on that a minute.
Well, they've been at the core of all the fights that have to do with freedom to vote, freedom to assemble, freedom to practice your own religion. And it shouldn't surprise you for a second, that they're being attacked because of how strongly they support democracy. I think that, if there's a fight about democracy in our present country, see who's been struck most recently so powerfully. It's the Black people have been struck.
Yeah.
And they are going to lead us to the promised land as well. I do believe this.
So there it is in the Torah in black and white, how they should have been treated, not how they were treated. That's really interesting that the people that expound all this stuff are the very people that are often the oppressors. Okay, that's it. I'm not going to get into politics.
We're on the edge. We're on the edge.
We're on the edge. So
we are reading Torah in our day, not in somebody else's.
I just wanted to add, because of what Yehuda said, again, it broadened for me when he said, this land is older than I am, will be here after me. But remember, because that's the difference between the soul, this goes back to creation, and this goes back, all these rules ultimately lead to, we are, how can you lose what you never owned? Hashem is the owner, so to speak, of all of nature and everything. we get use of it. And we are part of that earth. And when it's our time, we go back ashes to ashes, dust to dust, right? So he took us out of the clay and breathed the human soul into us. You can take that as a
Took us a
even if
long
it's
time to get here.
even if it's not literal, it speaks to the notion of a consciousness that transcends our physical being and our physical body. At the same time, and we show that we show our devotion, as Ovivo always says, by how we treat other people. The idea that people have to be in servitude, that because of now we can bring in the Garden of Eden, because of the fact that we have to sustain ourselves and we have to create an economic system to help everybody survive, and we have to depend on each other to some degree, we're going to have to end up in some kind of contractual agreement with other people to do things, right? Unless we live nomadically on our own. But even then, I say, no man is an island. If you're among your kin and then among the broader world, you're going to be doing business with them. But you have to do it in an honorable way. And if you have to control people's labor and their bodies for a while, you still have to consider them human. And what happened in slavery later on is they were considered subhuman. And the minute you can dehumanize somebody, it's very easy to persecute them. We've seen that over and over in history. So, and then the hope comes in because it can never be forever, right? So even all these rules here, it's the way I'm looking at this over and over again now from this first time is this thread, this chain from Genesis 1 up to now and into eternity, because it's all these threads are connected into what it means to be a human being and then to be a Jew in this world. Thank you.
Don? There we go.
Yeah, I really think what this is an attempt to reform a system that was already in place. Slavery was used all over the ancient world in the age before mechanization. It was essential. And like Ruth Ellen said, the slaves were dehumanized. And this was an attempt to reform that system and bring, not end it, not abolish it, but reform it.
I agree with you. There's so many things in the Torah that are taking on, this is the way things are. No, we're going to do things differently. I agree with you.
Has anyone ever heard this quote, whoever acquires a Hebrew slave acquires a master? So I asked you this question this morning. Who else was liberated when the Israelites were led out of Egypt?
The riffraff, the multitudes.
The Egyptians too, the
The
slave
Egyptians
holders.
as well.
Right.
Taskmaster didn't have a task.
Now you got to do something else with your time.
Yeah.
All right, Arnie, sorry.
So just reading how possibly, Hashem could look down on us in our daily dealings and how he would judge us for our actions. I was just reading the biography of this guy, Sam Zamure. I don't know if any of you ever heard of him, but he started United Fruit. Jewish guy, just loved bananas. And because of that, figured out a way to keep bananas preserved enough to sell them in Brooklyn and built this giant company. Later on, he was so rich, he caused, a coup in Guatemala, did all these, horrible things to the peasant class down there. But he gave all this money to Israel, was an avid Zionist, gave all this money to Tulane University, on and on and on. I mean, and he's considered a righteous person in Israel, all this stuff, you know? So it's just we're all like that. We all, you know, do some good, we do some bad, we all fall. I mean, it's just impossible to keep it so we're always on the right side, you know? That's my
He was the first person that really developed slash and burn agriculture. He also created the whole concept of moving fruits and vegetables to places that don't have them. And all the systems that went around that came directly from what was developed by deciding that bananas would be a good commodity to sell in Brooklyn.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
amazingly great stuff, but
Yeah.
you consider the other stuff. How do you judge a guy like that? You know?
So
Well,
actually,
Carnegie, look at Dale Carnegie, who was a robber baron, but he built libraries all over the country.
Yeah.
he's actually a very controversial figure.
Andrew Carnegie, Dale Carnegie was a
I
self-help.
meant Andrew. Excuse me. You're right. You're right.
That's funny.
Arnie, I just wanted you to know he's a very controversial figure, although he's considered to be a great supporter. And there's some story, I don't remember the story, I don't want to get distracted by looking it up, but there's some story about how his influence actually was one of the reasons that the support of the state of Israel.
Oh, yeah, he was a big Zionist, for sure.
Right, but he also, Israel is reluctant to identify too strongly with him because some of the things that we're reading about now, he did not do.
Right.
Right.
My
The
point
very
exactly.
specific things we're reading about here.
Right. My point exactly.
Or Bernie Madoff, who spent his money creating a project that brought young people to Israel. Oh my gosh. You know, and the thing is, as soon as he was busted, they had to scramble to figure out how are they going to continue the legacy program. You know, and they did. It's still something that's available to young people, but it came from Bernie Madoff originally.
Ruth Ellen?
I was just saying in general, the law of unintended consequences. And my new slogan is no one is any one thing. So, you know, and when we're talking earlier about laying the land fallow and everything, I don't remember this guy's name. They did an American Masters thing on him and he won the Nobel Peace Prize. He's a guy who was a volunteer. He went to Africa or something. Yehuda, you may well know who I'm talking about. I can't remember. But he developed he won the Nobel Peace Prize for presumably finding a way to do agriculture that could feed the world, and poverty went down.
Borlaug.
Okay. I mean, that's a case.
He created the Green Revolution, but the Green Revolution included tremendous amounts of fertilizer to grow out things, and the breeding programs were to like develop a wheat that could use a lot of fertilizer to overproduce, basically, but it messed up.
And because they couldn't see that far into the future. Now, and that guy, honestly, I don't think he did not abuse any workers in Guatemala picking bananas or anything. He really thought he was sincerely trying to solve a world problem. And then it still slapped us back in the face because we went too far away from nature abhorring a monoculture and good practices and things like that. So yeah, it's, you know, it's a sine wave when when these great discoveries happen, and then over time they get we find the other shoe drops. But yeah, and I think that's part of the issue now, like why Israel doesn't want to do it, because the minute somebody makes one mistake these days, it's like their whole personality, anything good they ever did, or it's just this zero tolerance for forgiveness in a broader sense is, I think, one of the big problems with what's happening in the world today. But I'm sorry, I digress.
Alan?
It raises a question in my mind, as you said, Aviva, when you learn about some of the practices and they don't comply with what we've been reading about, the choices that we're supposed to make, and yet because somebody becomes a big donor, whether it's libraries or schools or Israel, it's as though they've bought themselves respectability and have been able to overcome not following these guidelines that we've been given for what it's like to what's important about being a member of a community. And it doesn't seem to me to be an equal balance. Is that you forget about the other things or ignore the other things? When you talk about the bananas, I learned visiting Costa Rica of the cancers that were caused by United Fruit Company's policies about dealing with pesticides, and how the people were not instructed properly on how to administer them, and wound up with these cancer. What's the term when there are a number of cases in one area? I'm blanking out on that. Clusters, in different areas that had never had that before, and it was because of these choices that were made for economic reasons. And yet, at the other end of the scale, the big high-level donations buy the respectability, and we forget about that or ignore that history.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what happened with Sackler, the Sackler family recently.
Yeah.
They're tearing their names off of everything.
the book that everyone should read that addresses this head on, it's not written by a Jew, is called Winners Take All. And but it deals with that issue. How you acquire your extreme wealth is one thing, what you do with it is another. Does one cancel the other, or is one legitimate if the other is not? It's a real issue. It's a real moral conundrum. Be that as it may, we're losing people. Let's do a quick read through Bechutokai. Where's my cheat sheet? Here it is. Let's see. Yeah, so we actually we've got two lines that still belong. These two lines belong in Behar, but let's read them as part of Bechutokai and try to go all the way to line 45, if possible. Okay, who hasn't read that would like to? I see, I don't know. Craig, are you back with us? Or maybe Vic. Let's have Vic read. Craig, I'll have you read in a few minutes. Vic, take a chunk if you can see the screen. You're muted. Okay, there you go. Are you okay with reading, Vic?
Yeah.
Okay.
You shall make no idols, nor set up a sculpted image or a sacred pillar for yourselves. And you shall not put a figured stone in your land and to bow over it. For I am the Lord your God. My Sabbaths you shall keep. My sanctuary you shall revere. I am the Lord. If you go by statutes and keep my commands and do them, I shall give you rains in their season, and the land will give its yield, and the tree of the field will give its fruit. And your threshing will overtake the vintage, and the vintage will overtake the sowing. And you will eat your bread to the full, and you will dwell securely in your land. And I shall set peace in the land, and you will lie down with none to cause terror, and I shall make evil beasts cease from the land, and no sword will pass through your land. And you will pursue your enemies, and they will fall before you by the sword. And 5 of you will pursue 100, and 100 of you will pursue 10,000, and your enemies will fall before you by the sword. And I shall turn toward you and make you fruitful, and multiply you and fulfill my covenant with you, and you will eat old grain long stored, and you will clear out the old for the new. And I shall place my tabernacle in your midst, and I shall not loathe you. And I shall go about it in your midst, and I shall be God to you. And as for you, you will be my people. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, from your being slaves to them, and I broke the bars of your yoke and made you walk upright.
Yeah, that's actually, thank you, Ellen. It's a better place to stop. I was just concerned with time, but that was my note, is only to go through that line, so. All right, there's a lot of really, really specific language here that is beautiful and can be expanded. I love line, well, first of all, the whole concept, the whole idea is if you follow, then, if then. If you follow my commandments and keep them and actually do them, it's not just dream them, think about them, nod your head. There's a lot involved in it. Then the rain will come in its season, etc. And that not only that, you will, line 5, you will you will be able to still eat what you have until you reap the next season. Like there won't even be a gap. You're still going to eat what you have stored until your next harvest, and then you will eat fully. You will eat till you're sated, not just eat, and then you will sit safely in your land. I know you have your hand up, Yuda, but I just want to point out that line 12 is also a very important line. I will be ever present in your midst. I will be your God, and you shall be my people. Okay, open for discussion. These were important lines to me. Go ahead, Yuda.
I want to suggest that this was written during the time where people changed from being nomads into settling down and doing agriculture. And here we are enshrined in this writing, the whole concept of saving food. And I love that because, I mean, we wonder from where we get our historical background of our food systems. And here is one where it was written down that you actually have to save food to carry from year to year. It led to Costco.
Also,
Actually,
Joseph's dream, right?
Yeah.
yeah. I
But-
think that your example of Costco, I kind of wish you hadn't said it, because Costco to me is
You don't understand. I'm just trying to tell jokes so that Alan will laugh.
okay. Sorry to be so serious. I think the concept of Costco implies imminent uncertainty and lack of plenty that I think causes people to not be generous of spirit.
Well, how about going back to the first thing I said of the whole thing? This is that transition. Because look, we already had, we have very clearly that Jacob and his sons were nomads. They had a tent, but they moved their tents around. They'd sent them out into the field to graze their herds, and then they come back. But here, it very specifically says you have to basically save food.
It actually, the line that I was referring to, it says something the opposite. It says you do not have to. God says, I will make sure that from the time of your ending your supplies will last until the next harvest. I think
Understood, but this is agriculturally based, and you're making a shift from growing and producing to keeping.
Yeah, so it's very forward looking, because we are at the time of supposedly still in the desert, right? And here is already a concept of, but when you're in the land, in other words, your heart needs to understand these things before you enter the land, because in the land, right? In the land, these concepts are important. So if there is a feeling, if you trust that if you im tilchu bechutokai, if you follow my laws, then, and the laws are very complex and they're very numerous. They're not the mitzvot. It's not the 613 commandments. It's much more expansive than even that. And only then will you be secure. I mean, I had a real crisis moment yesterday thinking about how we're going to talk about these parashiot today in light of what's going on in the greater world that we live in. In the economic world we live in the political maps that we live in this is a really significant time in the US right now, where college graduations and the choice of who speaks at college graduations and what people feel like they got out of their 4 expensive years and what are they taking forward into the world. This is very fraught times. I'm reading this, I'm thinking, man, this is getting a little hard. You know, as much as I find very significant, this is really hard to read for me at this time. Reality is a little too much in my face.
I don't pretend to have an understanding of how the liturgy was put together, but why do these passages that I hear, Yehuda's voice when I hear the rain in its season and have that's elevated. It's there right alongside the V'ahavta that we say after the Shema. So this central point of the liturgy, and I'm curious if there is a history or why they're connected, because they don't come together in the Torah.
And actually, that passage that we read in our Siddur is not this one. The words are similar, but I forget where it's from, but I believe it's actually from Deuteronomy, if I'm not mistaken. But it doesn't matter. Either way, we are here in the central point, right? We're wrapping up the laws of holiness. And to me, I do not even struggle with this sentence. It's so clear to me because it's so open-ended. It always goes back to you as a person to figure it out. You got a guidebook. It's not bad. You're not alone, right? You don't have to go to print out the PDF owner's manual. It's there and it's been passed to you. That's the other really important concept is, first of all, you're not on your own having to figure this out. It's been passed to you. And all you need to do is open up the front page of the paper to see what happens when people don't actually internalize the covenant. Jews not excluded, especially, right? So that's why I feel like it's hitting me in the face, but it makes it feel even more important. This simple sentence, if you follow my commandments, the rains will come in their season. There's an entire Torah right there. Study that one. All the rest is commentary. I feel like it's a central point. It's very clear to me in its clarity that it's not simple, and if you're looking for simplicity, you're looking in the wrong place. I don't know. But what do we think? This line to me is very intriguing. It says, I shall walk in your midst, and I will be your God, and you will be my people. Not my children, my people. I don't know why that line jumped out at me.
Oh, I unmuted myself. Can I say something?
Of course.
Well, what popped out at me was verse 11. It said, I will Vayikra, and I will not abhor you, which was a weird word. In Safari, it says, I will not spurn you. I'm trying to read some of the commentary on that, and it's so esoteric, and a lot of it goes to the Zohar. And when they seem to be saying that when Hashem says, I will not spurn you or abhor you, it means your soul, your spirit, after you leave this earth, even. You will, and then there were, I forgot who said, Or Chaim on Leviticus 26. Oh, that's 11:10. I'm looking at the wrong one. But anyway, that just freaked me out. Well, not freaked me out, but I mean that the underlying concepts here that these ancient rabbis focused on have to do with maintaining a relationship with Hashem beyond this earth. You start out, and it is important to talk about sustaining oneself and having food in its season and all that, but then there's between the lines and some of this poetic verbiage is really about returning to Hashem and practicing what was put out in the Torah to make one holy, so that one will not be spurned, so that one will be spiritually ready to the final return, so to speak.
Craig looks like he has something to say.
Yes, I'm intrigued by this word people that you brought up, because what are Jews anyway? Are we a race, a culture, an ethnicity, a religion? But here it seems to say we are a people. But what are people? All humans are people. So it's really extraordinary for God or whoever wrote for God saying that we are his people. What about the other people? I just am intrigued by that word.
So I think, I mean, in the simplicity of it, we have to look at the idea of covenant, and this is it implies that the relationship is what's important. And again, why in our history, why in our story are we chosen people? Are we chosen to be given goods and then sit and enjoy those goods amongst ourselves? That's not what chosenness is about. The chosenness is to be the ones who carry forward for all, right? Not just for us. So the covenant was made with the descendants of Abraham. Abraham was singled out to say, yeah, leave all the comforts of home. Hey, I got a plan for you here. But that plan was not an individual plan, right? We are all known as Bnei Israel. We are all the descendants of that person who said, sure, I'll go. I'll do this. And so what does that mean? It's not for singled out for being given gifts. It's being singled out for carrying on a responsibility.
Oh, I mean, obviously, it isn't all of Abraham's progeny he's singling out, because Muslims and Christians are as well. Are they the chosen people?
The idea of chosenness is very complicated, but if you actually go back to where we originally encountered the idea of covenant, it goes back to Abraham. The story of the Garden of Eden, by the way, there's a mirroring of another word that was used only, I believe, 3 times in the relationship of God to the people. This idea of I will dwell among you. Okay, that is I believe the word. What is that? Hitalachti betokechem. I will stroll. I will be among you, like in a casual kind of way. I'll always be there.
I understand, but we've often discussed the problematic accusation that, hey, you guys are the chosen people. You have a superiority complex, whatever. Is now our retort, hey, you're chosen too, Mr. Muslim, Mr. Christian. You're descendants of Abraham. You're as chosen as we are.
Well, the idea of retort to me is very problematic because
respond.
Right. So when we respond and we say you too, it's very different because in my understanding, the idea of a covenant, the agreement says, yes, we will be those ones who have to actually examine our actions very, very carefully, even when they're not comfortable, even when they prevent us from accumulating wealth, even if they prevent us from feeling like we can elevate ourselves above others. Right?
But
And
isn't the simple answer just that we receive the Torah? I mean, that's the
Abraham didn't receive the Torah. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I thought. So to date it back to Abraham.
Well, it just said, yeah, but it got more specific after that.
I want to say it in one sentence. We shoulder responsibility.
And Gentiles don't, and Muslims don't.
We take it very, very personally that we are shouldering responsibility for our actions, for the way we act in this world. That is the covenant. We have shouldered the responsibility to we look, our decision, I used to teach a lesson in school about this. I taught about the whole nature of Shabbat. It always starts with Shabbat. the 7 days are a pretty arbitrary human construct. They're not a construct. It could have been 8 days. It could have been 6 days. 7. We decided 7, and when Shabbat comes around, we either decide to do it or we don't, and we have responsibility for doing that. If you have a job and you're required to work on Shabbat, it's on you. You chose to work on Shabbat. It's on you. So therefore, you have a responsibility either to do or not, but it is on you, and we accept that. And once you accept responsibility, all the good words of the world also come with it. Belief, and respect, and almost any word you can think of that's a good word associates directly with the word responsibility.
So a lot of people have a lot to say. Ruth Ellen, Arnie, and Sarah.
Chomping at the bit here because Craig, the lawyer in him, I don't know, but I think the problem comes from not reading between the lines when it says my people. They left out the my chosen people. Of course, all people are Hashem's people. And the problem is in the modern world, the rest of the world has decided that that means we think we're superior. That's them imposing their on us. We were chosen to be as this example of how to be holy. And to your point about the covenant, it started with Abraham, but remember, we are not B'nai Abraham, we are B'nai Yisrael. This is very important too, Craig. So we came from the children of Jacob. Jacob was separated from Abraham's other descendants, and he said, remember what's Ishmael's mother, Hagar, I don't worry, I'll make a great nation of him too. Now, maybe this was after the fact to explain why people were fighting with each other. But Hashem picked Abraham because Abraham did not burn his children, sacrifice his children to Baal. Because all the things that these other human beings did, societies did, were abhorrent to Hashem. But he didn't destroy all of them. He singled out, I shouldn't say he, Hashem singled out the ancestor, the seed for a people that would act as an example for the world, not as to have sovereignty over the rest of the world. So when it says my people, this code here is a set of responsibilities. We've talked about that in past years too. We haven't quite gotten there yet. Jews, that Hebrew National commercial held to a higher standard. It was a joke, but that's how I see the children of Israel and the whatever remnants. Now, presumably, we're only 2 of the 12 tribes, wherever the other 10 are. That's another story for another day. But that's what is meant by that, I think. So don't leave out those words that weren't the adjectives that were left out. Put them back in.
Arnie, and then after that, Sarah.
Yeah. I think this whole chosen people thing has been a double-edged sword to the Jews. Because, I can't tell you how many times in my life, people figure out I'm Jewish and they go, oh, you're the chosen people. But it doesn't always mean a good thing. And if we look at the political happenings today with Israel, certainly many countries do far worse things to other people than Israel does. But no country gets as many reprimands from the UN or from the international community as Israel. And why is that? Because, they believe that we should have a higher standard or something.
Exactly. Higher standard.
Yeah.
Assigned to us, our responsibility on our shoulders.
It's a double-edged sword, so if we can live up to that covenant, great. But because we're human, we're going to fail. And, we could point out all these failures, especially what's happening now in Israel. And, but maybe they wouldn't have been held under the lens they are if we didn't have this international concept of us having to live up to a higher standard.
Mm. I just wish that our leaders in Israel would just embrace living to that higher standard.
Yeah.
The one who says no politics, but I agree with you 100%. Sarah had something to say. You have your hand up.
It's just simply that the promise to Abraham and his seed is different than what happened at Sinai when we received the Torah. There wasn't a Torah before. There was a Torah, but it wasn't written down and handed to the people. So it's kind of, if you just separate the two, I mean, in a sense, you can't. Everybody is God's people. And when you say Abraham's seed, yeah, it includes, Esau and Jacob and every Ishmael and Isaac. But they didn't all receive the Torah. So that's where this chosen thing comes in. And that's where the burden of carrying the Torah comes in. And that's a different thing. Does that help, Craig?
It all helps. Sure. I mean, we're considering various hypotheticals.
Yeah.
Do we all get to be
We're-
called
we're all-
rabbis now? Are we all Craig's rabbis now?
No, but we all have to think, and I admire anybody who questions things because it shows that you're thinking about things. I'm always questioning and thinking, as you can well tell.
I'm not saying any of this is true.
No,
The accusation that Arnie's encountered or I already articulated about, hey, you guys think you're so superior or this or
Right.
that. Is there any possibility that God created us to be superior?
Well, I think that to me, when I read the Torah, there is definitely a purpose behind all this, and definitely a purpose for Israel to exist. Because, I mean, just historically, let's bring it down to earth. Historically, how many times the Jews have been kicked in and out of Israel and taken over by other people, and now we're back in Israel. I personally believe that there is a purpose for that down the road.
We're the magic potion for the world, and
Yeah.
that it all runs through the Jews, and the accusation and the
Well,
startling
that's a dangerous concept.
the
as well.
accusation and the startling fact to a lot of people who don't think about it as much as we do, but when they realize what a tiny number of Jews exist in the world, 0.02%, and yet our level of achievements, not always for the good. I mean, we already mentioned Bernie Madoff, and we could point to various other people. I don't want to get political, but the bottom line is, I think we're all sort of politically correct, and I don't want to say anybody's superior to anybody else, but that is one reading of it, and then you put it together with the data and you say, what's going on here? What is it? Maybe it all flows from Torah, but maybe there's something else going on.
It could be the value system of education. I mean, I think the Jews have always valued education, and by
That comes from Torah study too, doesn't it, Arnie?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you because I was talking.
I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I just wanted to say, doesn't the Torah study come from Torah study as well?
Oh, absolutely. I was going to mention that. Thank you. Yeah, no, I mean, by the fact that we do this and other scholarship endeavors, to improve our mind, we value this. And you have to have, I think that it's not something inherent, it's something taught in our basic values I mean, just to be brought up, to be educated, to learn, all this stuff is part of the mores and folkways, if you want to call it that.
I'm going to call on Ruth Ellen, and after that, I suggest we read, like I put in the chat. I think if we just stop at that line 46, I'm good with that. Then you guys can just determine the rest. But Ruth Ellen, go ahead, and then let's read.
Well, I'm just going to say what we've left out again. You know, when Craig asked, you know, did God make us, you know, better? You know, what, you know, what's the word? More successful, whatever. I forgot what term he used. But this is where the covenant comes in, because Avram chose Hashem. He didn't have to. Others did. The implication is Hashem could have gone to other people to find his Abraham, but he didn't find him until he found Abraham, number one. And so the idea of the chosen people, don't take out the idea of free will. Don't forget that there's a way that people who weren't born to a Jewish mother can, remember that even before there was before the temple was destroyed and we had the legal conversion, when they left Egypt, they said the people who decide to follow with you, even if they weren't part of the children of Israel to begin with, you were going to take them in as if they were your own, you know? So that's the covenant going, that's the Jacob's ladder going in the other direction. We are deciding that that we can be better by being holy as Hashem is holy, and that our lives are better. And this all goes back to, if we follow and do all these things in their season, our lives will be better, and the world will be better because of it. So it's not waiting for it to come down from Hashem. This is where we have to give back. Okay.
Well said.
And go ahead, Aviva.
No, I just was going to say whoever hasn't read yet, but go ahead. What were you saying, Ellen?
Well, I was going to say that leads to a very big but.
Yes, thank you.
Because we have this, you know, these promises of, you know, of ice cream sundaes and joyous, you know, full harvests and things like that, and then the line now begins with but.
Okay.
But if you do not heed me and do not do all these commands, and if you reject my statutes, and if you loathe my laws, not doing all my commands, voiding my covenant, I on my part will do this to you. I will direct panic against you, consumption and fever wasting the eyes and making the throat ache, and you shall sow your seed in vain, and your enemies shall eat it. And I will set my face against you, and you shall be routed before your enemies, and your foes shall hold sway over you, and you shall flee with none pursuing you. And even if with these you do not heed me, I will go on to chastise you sevenfold more for your offenses. And I will break the pride of your strength, and make your heavens like iron, and your earth like bronze. And your power shall be spent in vain, and your land shall not give its yield, and the tree of the land shall not give its fruit. And if you come in and counter against me and do not want to heed me, I will go on with blows against you sevenfold for your offenses. And I will unleash the beasts of the field among you, and they shall bereave you of your children, and cut off your cattle, and diminish you, and your roads will be desolate. And if through these you do not take chastisement by me, and you come and encounter against me, I on my part will come in and counter against you, and I myself will strike you sevenfold for your offenses. And I will bring against you the avenging sword of the covenant's vengeance. And you shall gather into your towns, and I will send pestilence in your midst, and you shall be given into an enemy's hands. When I break your staff of bread, 10 women shall bake your bread in one oven, and dole out your bread by weight, and you shall eat and not be sated. And if despite this you do not heed me, and you come and encounter against me, I will come against you in wrathful encounter, and I on my part will chastise you sevenfold for your offenses. And you shall eat the flesh of your sons, and the flesh of your daughters you shall eat. And I will destroy your cult places, and cut off your incense stands, and I will put your corpses on top of the corpses of your fetishes, and I will loathe you. And I will turn your towns into ruins, and lay waste your sanctuaries, and I will not smell your fragrant odors. And I myself will lay waste to the land, and all your enemies who settle in it shall be appalled by it. And I will scatter among the nations, and you I will scatter among the nations, and I will unsheathe the sword against you, and your land shall be a desolation, and your towns a ruin. Then shall the land expiate its Sabbath years, all the days it is desolate, while you are in the land of your enemies. Then shall the land keep a Sabbath, and expiate its Sabbath years. And all the days of desolation it shall keep a Sabbath, for not having kept your Sabbath years when you dwelt there. And those left among you I will bring faintness into their hearts in their lands of their enemies, and the sound of driven leaf shall pursue them, and they shall flee as in flight from the sword, and fall with none pursuing. And each man shall stumble against his brother as before the sword, with none pursuing, and there shall be no standing up for you in the face of your enemies. And you shall perish among the nations, and the land of your enemies shall consume you. And those left among you shall rot in their guilt in the lands of your enemies, and also in the guilt of their fathers, with them they shall rot. And they shall confess their guilt and the guilt of their fathers in betraying my trust, and also in their coming in encounter against me. I, on my part, will come and encounter against them, and bring them into the land of their enemies, and then shall their uncircumcised heart be humbled, and then shall they expiate their guilt. And I will remember my covenant with Jacob, and also my covenant with Isaac, and also my covenant with Abraham I will remember, and the land I will remember. And the land shall be forsaken of them, and it shall expiate its Sabbath years when it is desolate of them, and they shall expiate their guilt by very reason they have rejected my laws, and my statutes they have loathed. Yet even this too, when they are in the land of their enemies, I will not reject them, I will not loathe them, to put an end to them, to void my covenant with them, for I am the Lord their God. And I will remember for them the covenant of the first ones whom I brought out from the land of Egypt before the eyes of the nations, to be God for them. I am the Lord. These are the statutes and the laws and the teachings that the Lord set out between himself and the Israelites on Mount Sinai through the hand of Moses.
I know you've been waiting to read that all day.
That sounded great. I think you emphasized, your emphasis was very important.
But it's unrelenting. It's
Aren't we
unrelenting.
supposed to read that fast?
I think we're supposed to read it without stopping.
Oh, yes, and without taking a breath as well.
Yeah, but it's. I think that you're not supposed to stop midway.
Right.
I think that was what I read.
Right.
And it's just unrelenting.
Right.
Yeah.
But so something you read at least 3 times, it might be 4, I was trying to track it. You will run though nobody is pursuing you.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that.
And with the sound of a leaf you will run.
As a driven leaf also. Here comes the title of that book, Yehuda, that you want to read for book club, As a Driven Leaf.
Right, by Milton Steinberg, right.
Yeah. Arnie patiently has his hand up.
Yeah, I think, this has historic reference. When you think about the destruction of the temples, the Babylonian exile, the Romans, I mean, just think, if you were living in those times and read this, you would be going, holy cow, it's happening, This is exactly what happened. So it's quite amazing. We're living in the aftermath of those predictions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
excuse me, I think the most extraordinary thing after all that fire and brimstone kind of stuff, it says, but when you are in the land of your enemies, I will not forsake you. I will not break the covenants. And that's why we're still here, you know? So the hope of the notion of repentance and forgiveness is what it ends on, which is it. So there's some relief even after all that messy stuff. And yet on the other hand, sometimes if we were destroyed, that would be a blessed relief, wouldn't it? It's almost more of a punishment to have to keep surviving among the enemies for these transgressions, you know?
Is this though what you just mentioned, Ruth Ellen? Is this sort of a sign of God maturing, where earlier on there were, I give up. These people are only doing evil. Let's get rid of them and start over again.
Yeah.
And here is saying you're going to get punished. You're going to have to go through hell on earth, but I'm still there for you.
Does anyone know when this portion was actually written? You know, was it author P or J or
I was
whatever?
wondering that too. Yehuda usually knows. I
Well,
was
I
wondering
do-
if this kind of fire and brimstone harsh stuff was all tended to be written by one particular anticipated source by biblical archaeologists or whatever.
Even if we knew somebody would dispute it, right? Because we have that ongoing sort of like who believes what. There's actually a pretty decent explanation, at least in terms of how the reform movement looks at authorship and what it actually means. Like in the greater picture, why is it important? Like, because is blind belief what we're looking for? Is it just easier to presume that a God wrote these words and then, we don't have to sit and discuss it because those are the words, so we should just take them as they are? But I want to go back to this line, Alan, about that God said, I will be with you in your exile. So let me pose this. Is it a comfort or a reminder of obligations even in exile? I will be with you, as in, don't worry, I'll be with you. You're okay. Or is it, I will be with you. You're obligated, even under exile.
I think it's rather, everything that led up to this had to do with there were options for redemption. And I think that that's what that is. I think, it follows in natural progression from the previous stuff we just read about. This is how you redeem yourself.
Short answer, I think it's both, Aviva. I think it's both.
Well,
Go ahead, Arnie.
If we look at history, we know, because of the destructions of the temple, we had this great rabbinical scholarship happen. And that's a good thing, and so God must have been with us still for this to be accomplished, even after the dire consequences of the temple being destroyed.
And there's definitely a line of thought that says that the internalizing of the covenant is the portable sanctuary that traveled with the Israelites in all their diasporas. That is the reason why we are even here against all odds to have this wonderful discussion today, because the entirety of what everything is and the idea of the covenant as a place and as a concept always traveled with the Israelites, and that there is a school of thought that says that the destruction of the temple actually was a blessing to the Jews because it allowed them to take, what did they carry with them in great times of turmoil? They still carried the Torah. And it enables us, like I said, to actually be here, to have this discussion. So the destruction of the temple is seen as a punishment for lots of different things in the times of kings, but it brought with it a very something that we still have, regardless of the temple. And I have to say, Ruth Ellen, before I call on you, that I know it's going to sound like a non sequitur, but there's an image in one of the Israeli newspapers of a bulldozer uprooting olive trees in the West Bank. And I saw that and my heart absolutely fell, because here everything that we are learning is in the image of that, what is wrong with that image of the olive tree. Everything. Not, the least of it is about the idea of destruction of a tree. It's destruction of another people whose lives are intertwined in generations going back as far as they know in the olive trees in that region. It just absolutely, I didn't even know what to, I didn't know where my next breath would come from, because we want to think of the land of Israel upholding our most important relationship, and it's very hard to see it. It's a visual. Okay, I got that off my chest. With Ellen, all yours.
Well, when you got it off your chest, I would like to say, if everybody's worried about politics, I'm sorry, because this does apply. And if Alan has to turn Facebook off, now is the time. The first thing I was going to say to Arnie's points, because I told you earlier about a webinar I saw about a historian who happens to be Jewish, who wrote about the Rome's sojourn into Palestine and all that. And
Josephus.
well, he's one of them. Yeah, he wrote about it, but this guy was talking about why the Romans destroyed the temple and all that. And he was being interviewed by an Orthodox rabbi in San Francisco. And he says, well, we believe that the Jews, we don't blame the Romans. We blame the Jews of the time because they did not follow the commandments. This is just what you're all alluding to now. We brought it on ourselves. And it is interesting because in this parashah, they mentioned the uncircumcised heart, that you have to come into it internally and spiritually. And this is what's very frustrating, which also brings in what Craig mentioned last week, that book he's reading, because the idea that Zionism was one choice in terms of how to deal with the safety of the Jewish people. And the Zionists were the strongest ones. And now we're in a situation where the leaders there, I don't think they're really fulfilling the will of the majority of Israelis any more than our Americans are fulfilling the will of the majority of Americans. We have leaders who have let us down, and like we said, the Jews and the non-Jews, nobody has a monopoly on evil and dishonorable behavior against other fellow human beings, and we're all facing this. And it makes one wonder whether the state of Israel is going to be able to exist for much longer the way it is, because of everything that's going on here. And if they refuse to deal with a quote unquote two-state solution, and it's true, historically, the rest of the world and the colonialists made the Israeli leadership at the beginning, Ben-Gurion and all those people, and I'm not a total scholar of that, but enough to know, they had to make compromises. Can't remember all the details, but I read about that. But here we are now. So what is the righteous, honorable thing to do now? Thank you.
Yeah, let's face it, colonialism really screwed up the world. It wasn't, one country, it was the way of life, for centuries. And then the war ends, they said, let's create all these countries. Well, let's see. This one we could get a good oil contract with, so we'll create it with this leader who will give us the best oil contracts. And this guy is going to do this for us. And it was all, done politically rather than with any concept of the humanity involved and how to resolve things for the long run, for peace and prosperity for everybody.
Can I make a clarification? The term colonialism, as it is used, implies something that is not part of the reason Israelis object to the term colonialism is it implies not only a usurping of a land, but for the purpose of usurping its resources. It is not a cultural thing.
I'm not talking about Israel being colonial.
Right,
I was
I'm just
talking
making a
about
clarification.
England.
Right, so the term colonialism, people use it very liberally now to describe Israel vis-a-vis the Palestinians in the camps, but it's very different. I just want to make that clarification. It's really important to me.
Yeah, I know. That's not what I meant either. I get upset when people are flipping it. It's double speak. It's double speak when they talk about it now. But we're seeing to the point that the Israeli leadership, headed by who BB, BN is they're not. I'm with Aviva. That it makes my heart sink, because when I read about that the ultra Orthodox and the West Bank are taking this opportunity of chaos with Iran and all of that to do, I shouldn't say the ultra Orthodox, but the group of people who moved to the West Bank are not being very nice to their Palestinian neighbors, and it's hard to know how to respond as a Jew in America, especially when the non-Jews around you say, "Look what they're doing," and it's that when you have friends and family and know the history of our people. We talked about this since October 7th. We've been talking about this. How do we hold these two important concepts in some kind of equilibrium? And unfortunately, it feels like it's getting harder.
I want to take a moment to mention something, because since we're out of the Torah study portion, I'm going to take it off the live stream now. Even though I know you wanted it off before, I wanted to have a clean break.
Okay, then I'm on record now. They're going to come in.
That's it, exactly. The whole world knows. But I just wanted to remind everyone that a week from tomorrow, we have a screening, an opportunity to do a screening, which we're going to do on Zoom, of a documentary called A Tree of Life, which is about the Tree of Life Pittsburgh synagogue shooting and the aftermath. And we'll have the opportunity after the screening. The documentary itself is about an hour and 20 minutes long. And then after it's over, Diane Rosenthal, who is the sister of two of the victims of the shooting and has been spending a lot of her time lately speaking to various groups and talking about the issues of anti-Semitism and the issues of how does a community come back from something like that. And she'll be with us by Zoom from her home and answer our questions. And so it's a terrific opportunity, and I hope as many of us as possible can take advantage of it and take part. So that'll be a week from tomorrow, starting with the screening at 11:30 Hawaii time, and then at 1 o'clock after it's over, she'll be joining us by Zoom. So we'll be sending out more emails about it, but I just wanted to call that to your attention. And I think it does relate